Hey friends, so I am here with two of my good friends, Rere and Shelli, and we're going to talk about a very important topic of raising biracial children in America. So Rere, tell us a little bit about you and then I'll let you share.
Alright, my name is Rere Lunsford. I've been married for 14 years to James, and we have two biracial kiddos because James is white, and as you see, I am not, I am black. So.
I'm Shelli Auget, and I've been married almost 24 years to my husband Neville, and we have 4 kids. And my husband was born in the U.S., but his nationality is Indian, and so our children are biracial too.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about the struggles that you face in raising. Actually, you know what, let's go back even before that. So let's talk about like before kids, okay? The marriage part, like as far as like when you first got married, the struggles you faced, kind of like getting that culture and like the backgrounds and the upbringings from the other person. What are some struggles that you faced?
For me, I really didn't think about it because my family's super diverse. I have an aunt, and she was married to my mom's brother for years, and she's white. My mom's brother's black, and so you know, I grew up having friends that were biracial, and so to me, I really didn't think much about it. But James grew up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. He's number 9 of 11 kids.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but like he grew up in just not with a lot of diversity around him, not a lot of diversity in his family. So it was kind of shocking, I think, to his family. Not kind of, it was. It was shocking when James brought home the black girl. And then when James said, hey, I'm going to marry the black girl, his parents, they were concerned. And one of their main concerns that they brought up was life is going to be more difficult for your children. It's going to be harder for your kids. And I remember when he initially told me that, I remember my heart just kind of broke. But then I thought, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is the man I married, and we are going to have kiddos, and kids are going to have difficulties no matter who their parents are, and so we'll roll with that. And so we did.
That's awesome. So you're brave, and you're like, we're just going to deal with it. We're going to handle it as it comes.
And a part of me was like, Halle Berry is beautiful, and so I'm going to rock out some gorgeous Halle Berry babies. Let them have those struggles.
I love it. What about you? What are some of the struggles that you face?
I don't think I had struggles, or I wasn't anticipating struggles, more just different personalities, and his parents were raised so different than my parents. I was afraid there might be some concerns there, but I was so blessed that they were so welcoming and warm and wanted me to fit in with their culture, and so it just made it easy for me because they were so encouraging and just kind of let me jump right in and meet all their friends, and so it was an exciting for me to get to learn about such a new culture, and I guess I didn't really think about it that there might be a struggle, that you know, my children might look a little bit different than everybody else. And the one thing that I didn't anticipate is when 9/11 happened, people kind of looked at anybody that looked like they might be of Arabic kind of descent differently, and so I was like, I have boys, and I thought, you know, people may think, you know, they're Islamic, and you know, and that could be a struggle for my kids, and it was something that I'd never thought I would have to think about before. But you know, just raising children that look a little bit different, you have to think, you know, how are they being perceived by other people? So that was kind of my only struggle that I was concerned about, is how are people perceiving my boys now that 9/11 has happened. So.
That's something James has talked about over the years. You know, we're raising 2 boys, and he has talked about his dealing with, you know, authority and just the way he maybe has approached authority. And he's like, you know, I would never want my boys to do some of the things I did as a teen, because my boys look very different than me.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's going to be, and so I think that was an eye-opener for him the last few years. I'm just kind of talking about the conversations that I remember my mom having with my brothers are conversations that I want to have with my sons. And it's conversations that James's parents never had with him. And he's like, I never even thought about having those conversations. And so, I mean, it really does. It's just different perspectives, and I'm glad that we have those different perspectives.
That's awesome. So I think, you know, we talked a little bit about their identities. So how do you help your children, because they do have white and black, right? They have Indian and white. So how do you help them know who they are, and when the world is kind of like looking at them like, what are you?
I was really so naive. Like, I really never even thought that I'd have to think about, bringing culture to them or making them see themselves. Because honestly, in my mind, I was like, oh, I've got this because I'm black, so I can teach them all about being black. So I got this. And then it was River when he was probably 5, where I realized, it took me 5 years to realize, oh, you know what? It's not about me teaching him all about being black. Because he's not all black, he's black and white. And he came home from school one day and he was so excited. And he told me there's a kid in his class who is mixed, just like him. He has one parent that's black and one parent's white. Mommy, there's a kid in my class who was just like me. And in my mind, it shocked me because he had kids in his class who were black. In my mind, I'm like, you have black kids in your class. This is not new. But then I realized a kid who looks like him, who is light, who is his skin tone, who has a black parent and a white parent. And I realized, man, just how it was important to me as a kiddo growing up to see people on TV and friends in my class who looked like me. That was important for River to see people that didn't look like mommy, that looked like him. And I was like, man, representation is so important.
It is.
And so I immediately went to the library and I checked out all these books, and I specifically looked for books that had families that were biracial, that had families that had a black mom and a white dad, or vice versa. And it was a struggle finding those, but I did find them, and I was so excited to find those, and he was so excited to read those, and Aaron was so excited to read those. And so then I realized, like, it's not about me just thinking about pooling about my knowledge, because I'm not biracial. It's different. And so just kind of folding that all in together, he taught me a lot.
Yeah, because you want to kind of put your identity on them. But they have their own identity.
I realized, like, I was trying to raise them as strong black women, and they are not.
I think trying to help, well, first of all, I don't see my children, I guess, perceive them the way others do. So at first, I never thought about it because I think they just look like everybody else and they blend in. But other people are like, no, you can definitely tell they're Indian, And so I'm like, I had to step back and think about it, just how I see them. I think they're beautiful, and so I don't see them as a mixture of white and Indian. I just see them as beautiful people, and so I had to really step back and think, they do have this own identity, and I want it to be something that they celebrate, something they don't have, that they can be proud of, that it's special and something just for them, and that they need to know that part of them. I think because it can easily get lost because a lot of Americans, they don't even know what their background is, so I think it's special for them to have that identity that they can be proud of and grow up knowing that they have something that not everybody does.
Right. And I think it's usually later on in life people want to know where they came from, right? That's why there's that ancestry and all those kind of things where, like, where did I come from? What am I part of? To give them that sense of belonging. And so it's so important that you do that at a young age, and they already know, hey, this is who you are. And when you have that cultural upbringing, when you're putting both in, and Indian culture is very strong. It's very rich. There's a lot of traditions and a lot of beautiful things, and so you want to instill those things, but you're kind of like, but I'm white, I only know this much about it, and I think fathers parent differently, and so men may not even see it, so your husband may not even see that they need that, but it's so cool how you always take initiative in doing that, and I love that. And she even brought a book.
Yes, this is the background of my family. Parsi is a kind of a small Indian subset, and so we have this sitting in our living room, and if my kids ever want a reminder, this part of their background, it's good for them, they can just pick it up and look at it. And, in fact, we're going to be taking them to India this year for the first time, and so it's just going to be a big special trip for our family. The grandparents and all 6 of us are all going to be going, and so they can actually see it, not just hear about it, but actually see and experience, where their grandparents grew up, and just learn that part of them. I think that's going to be real special for them, and something they'll always keep with them. That's part of their background. So.
And I think it's, it's similar because I was born in India and then I was raised in Dallas, Texas.
Right.
And so for me, I'm not biracial, but I call it brown people problems because like everyone would always look at me and be like, what are you?
Right.
And there was
kind of like Neville.
I'm like, they didn't know if I was Indian, if I was mixed,
Which
if I was
Mexican.
Yeah. And so I remember my middle school years, I looked at people that looked like me and they were Hispanic. And I'm like, I'm Hispanic. That's the identity I'm choosing.
Right.
I mean, I knew I was Indian because I was Indian at home.
Right.
But I was like, those people look like me. And so I'm going to go hang out with them because you're always drawn to people who are familiar, who are similar to what you know and what you are like, right? And so I remember, thinking that's who I am. I'm Hispanic, And so in college is when I started getting closer to Indian people because I miss my parents. I didn't have that Indianness, So I was like, oh, they're Indian. I want to hang out with them, And so I think it's so good that you do that at a young age because at some point in life you always want to draw close to people naturally, Like I know when I walk into something, I always notice if I'm the only brown person.
Always.
Right.
And so especially
they usually are.
It's funny.
Yes.
Neville calls himself the token Indian. We're
Yes.
the only one in there.
Always.
So I'm thinking when we go to India, it's going to be so reversed.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the only blonde, blue-eyed girl.
Yes.
So it'll give me good perspective from what he has to deal with, and on a daily basis.
On a daily, all the time.
He's typically the only Indian in the room.
All the time.
With you guys.
It'll feel like how I feel at Target.
Right.
Or when I'm at the Kohl's earlier.
Yes.
Exactly.
It
It is.
Yeah.
And so you don't think about it till you're the one that is the different looking one.
Yes.
So, my children, since they have features from both of us, I don't know that they've had a moment like that, but I do think it's going to be eye-opening for them when we go to India and they see, oh, mom does look a lot different, and we in some standpoints look more like mom, and so we may end up looking more different in India than everybody else, where we usually kind of fit in. So,
or like when you said like how you see your children, you just see them as beautiful people, or you don't always think about it. And it's funny, once I was getting my hair done, and the lady does my hair, her little girl was in Aaron's pre-K class. And I said, oh man, Aaron just talks about your little girl all the time. She just adores him. He just adores her. And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, she loves him too. And I told my family, it was so funny because she likes this little white boy at school. And I remember thinking, like, she's talking about my kid. It was just so funny because, she's African, and it was hilarious because to her, she sees Aaron's light features. And she just thinks of him as just total white. She called him a white boy. I just died, and I was just like, who would have thought that I would have a kid that somebody referred to as a white boy? And I was like, she was like, she just loves that little white boy.
And I think that's why it is so important because we say that casually, but the thing is, as kids are growing up, they go through those phases where they're like, who am I? And they need to know. And so some people say I'm black, some people say I'm white, some people say I'm Indian, some people say I'm white. I don't know what I am. And I remember growing up at my house, I was Indian, like full-on Indian, watched Bollywood films, wore Indian outfits, ate Indian food with my hands, and I still do. I love Indian food and Indian clothes. But when I went to school, I was not Indian, right? Like I had to fit in with whoever I was around. And so there was this struggle of like, who am I? Right. And it's hard because people will tell you, oh, you're a white boy, and so it's hard for you to know for yourself and be strong and be confident in that identity. Otherwise, you're always going to be like, who am I?
Yeah. And I that's something I do think about a lot because, growing up, I always had friends who were biracial. And I remember, like, my friends just feeling just torn between two worlds sometimes because they weren't black enough for the black kids and they weren't white enough for the white kids. And I remember that was a struggle. And even though I'm not biracial, I've often felt like that. And I remember just being upset and talking to my mom about it because I always hear all the time, Rere, you talk just like a white girl. And it's like, what does that mean? Right. I remember going to my mom saying, like, I get sick of hearing that. And she was just like, she goes, ignore that because that's ignorant. She said, you speak like you speak. She said, you sound like you. And so I sometimes worry about my boys thinking, are they going to be torn between two worlds?
Right.
I don't want them to feel like they're not black enough for this
Mm-hmm.
and they're not white enough for this. I just want them to feel like River and Aaron.
Right.
And I want them to speak how they want to speak and like what they want to like and not worry about if somebody is trying to put them in a box.
Yeah.
But then that's in a perfect world, they're going to be able to do that. But we put each other in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Like filling out enrollment papers for school was
I
so
never know what to
stressful for
mark.
me.
For my
It
kids.
was just like
Right.
you had to pick
Right.
one.
You have to put something.
Yeah,
and you,
that
and
is
you have
hard.
to pick one.
Mhm.
And it even says, please pick one. There's a nice section that says, now you can check all the boxes, but in this box, we're counting
Right.
it.
Yeah.
You check one, and it's like, and I just felt like so much pressure. Like,
Right.
what do I check?
So what do you check other?
Yeah,
I usually check other.
Yeah.
I
Because if you put Caucasian,
Right,
they're gonna be
I
like, no,
know.
you're not. You
Yeah.
know, if you put Asian,
Right.
like, no,
I know.
yeah.
Exactly. I usually put other.
I checked African American because I was like, well, I'm African American and I'm the one who got it.
Right. I'm the one filling out
I
the
fill out the
form.
form.
That
So
makes sense.
if James comes next year, he
If
can
they
check
put their
white.
I love
But
it.
you know, it was, and then, when it was Black History Month, like River was so excited, just like learning about, everything.
Yeah.
And and he was really excited about like people that look like you, Mom.
Right.
He like did all these
Right.
different things.
Yeah.
I said, people that look like you too. And then he asked me one day, he said, if it was before the civil rights, would I still have to ride in the back of the bus?
Oh, wow.
And I said, yeah. I said, if during a time before civil rights, you would ride in the back of the bus. And he looked at me, he said, well, I get why you would have to ride in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
Because you're full black.
Right.
And he said, but why would I ride in the back of the bus? Because I'm just as much half daddy as I am half you. And I said, yeah, you said, you're right. You're just as much half me as you are. I said, but when people see you, majority of folks are going to say, you're a black man. And he was just like, why? I said, that's just the way it is.
So it's
Because we like to categorize.
Yeah, I said, I said, but you can be whoever you want to be. You can check whatever box you want to check.
Yeah.
I said, but sometimes people check boxes for us,
Mhm.
And then he said, I think it's unfair that people would just say, I'm just black, because I feel like that's not fair to daddy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and it was just like, he was just teaching me so
Right.
much.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I was like, oh, I don't even know how to answer some of those
Yeah.
questions and things like that.
Mhm.
And recently it was Loving Day, when the loving couple from the 60s, when interracial marriage became legal.
Yes.
I just
And
saw
so,
that.
so I was talking to the boys about that, and River said, once upon a time you couldn't have married daddy. I said, no. Once upon a time, like, my marriage to daddy would have been illegal. And he was just like, well, then what would have happened to us? I'm like, well, I guess you would be illegal. I said, but once upon a time, he was like, why? Why wouldn't somebody want you to marry daddy? I said, that was just the time then. And it was crazy to think that wasn't really that long ago.
Mhm.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. So whenever things like 9/11 or like what happened recently at OU, how do you have those conversations with your children, or do you have those conversations?
I do have those conversations with them, and then I just try to toe that line of putting the information out there, but still just making it age appropriate. And so so it's hard, and we've had to have those conversations because we've had instances where somebody has made a comment about them not wanting their kiddo to play with River because he was black. And like I remember the first time that happened, I was just like it hurt my heart because that's my kiddo. But then I thought back and I remember I was 6 years old the first time somebody called me the N-word, and somebody said they didn't want to play with me because of my skin color.
Wow.
And I was just like, so I remember that happening as a young kiddo, and then I thought that that's never going to happen to my kiddos, but that's reality.
Right.
It's going to happen. And so River recently asked me, he said, I know what the N-word is, Mommy. And I said, yeah. He said, what does it mean? I said, it means that somebody is a bigot. I said, it means that somebody has hate in their heart, and it means that somebody's going to dislike you just because of the color of your skin.
Yeah.
I said, but it doesn't mean anything against you,
Yeah.
I said, that's all about them. But then it just broke my heart that we were having this conversation,
yeah.
and he's 8 years old.
In 2019.
In 2019. But you know what? I want to have those conversations with him because I don't want him, I don't want to raise my boys with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Because I know what it felt like. I still know what it feels like today to be called that, you know. And so I don't want them to be instantly hit with it and not know how to react.
Right.
And so I want them to just be aware that, you know, sometimes it happens. You know, there are ugly people out there, but that's not everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
Yeah, and that's so important to tell them that it's not everybody.
It's not everybody.
Yeah, because then you're becoming just like those people.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's not everybody. You know, there's, you know, and so I just want to always have those conversations with them.
Yeah, that's so good.
Well, I'm fortunate that I haven't had to deal with those kind of experiences, but we have had just talks when my kids, starting when they were very little, and Austin, when he was little, drew a picture of our family, and he made sure he got the brown crayon for Daddy, and, you know, I was yellow, and so, you know, just from the get-go, we've just talked with our kids that there is a whole spectrum of colors, and God made us all different colors, and that's just something to celebrate, nothing to be discouraged because you're maybe a darker color, or someone else in your class may be a darker color, and so we never, I guess, had to talk about it as a problem as much as just celebrating and educating who you are, and that God made everybody to look a little bit different, and that's just something that
and it's beautiful
to be
like
proud of.
And that is something that
right, exactly.
And that is something that I talk about all the time with my boys. Like, you know, I've never shied away from I'm a different color than Daddy because they have eyes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're not colorblind.
And we're not colorblind, and that is something I say all the time to people, because they'll always say, "Oh, I was raised to not see color."
Yeah.
Well, your parents did wrong.
Right.
Because like the
Exactly.
sky is blue, the grass is green, I am black,
Yes.
James is white.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I want you to see color. Color is beautiful, and I love that we have color.
Yeah.
My different color with James' different color make these two beautiful babies
Right.
who are very different colors from each other.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's just like, so I always say, like, it's not, we don't want to be colorblind. Seeing color is not the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is when you see a color is inferior or superior or whatever.
Exactly.
But seeing color is not,
beautiful.
It's
It's
beautiful.
not-
It's
yeah,
not
how
the
God
issue.
wanted it to be.
Exactly. And so that's what I always stress to my boys.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't want anybody, there are times where people have like whispered to their kiddo when the kid has said, "Oh, she's dark chocolate," or "She's black," and they whisper, "Don't you say that."
Right.
And I've always said, that's fine for them to say that.
Right.
That's fine,
Right.
because that is true. Like, if they pointed out that Elmo was red, would you be like, "Don't you say that"?
Right.
No, you would not correct them.
Right.
So don't correct, because then that just leads into them thinking, "Oh, that is bad. It's
Yeah.
different. We don't say that out loud." You know, if you...
Or to befriend or have conversations with people that look different than you, because you're like, oh, it's awkward. So when you train a kid, like, we don't talk about that, or that's awkward, they're going to shy away from those conversations, and with those having relationships
Having
with those
relationships
people.
with, like, who wants to be friends with a kid who has to whisper his color?
Yes,
Right.
that's what kind of, get that vicious cycle of
It
ignorance
just- it
going.
does,
Because you
yeah.
don't want to know, and you don't want to teach, and then it just becomes, you stay in that darkness.
You just stay in that bubble. And
Yeah.
so my boys have always been one to kind of shout it out. River has shouted in the middle of Chick-fil-A,
Yes.
"I am light brown.
Yes.
My mom is dark chocolate." I'm like, let people eat their chicken.
I remember one of the times, like, when Mariah was in pre-K, she came home and we were, like, talking about something, or she was coloring, and she said, "That's skin color." Right? And like, "But I'm brown, and Mom, you're a different brown." And so I had the same conversation. I was like, "No, that's not skin color. That's a skin color."
Right.
Because the majority of what she was seeing was this was the skin color.
Right.
Yes.
So she's saying, "That's the skin color. Everybody else is a color." But I was like, no. All of us have skin color, and it's going to look different. And that's okay. We embrace that. God made us that way. And it's important to have those conversations, because every culture, like, especially in Asian cultures, and even, like, I think Black families have that, where, the different shades do matter, and you're shamed for that color.
Oh,
right.
And you don't get to choose your color.
It is such
And
it's
it
a
looked down.
huge
Yes.
thing. Especially, like, I see it a lot just in the Black community. My mom was a lot fairer than I was. My dad was darker, and I get my coloring from my dad. Then I have these two little brothers who were all different shades. And I remember, like, as a child, like, I wanted to be light like my mom. Like, I just, to me, that was beautiful. That's what I saw on TV. Prince was light, Vanity was light, the Barge was light, everybody was light, and light was bright. And I wanted that. And I remember my mom telling me, like, she said, you have beautiful skin. She said, you have beautiful skin.
Yeah.
She said, you have beautiful full lips. She goes, people pay good money to get your natural
Yes.
lips. And she said, just embrace it. And like, she just always just
that's
boosted
good.
that up in me.
That's good.
And but it took me years to embrace
Accept
that.
it, yeah.
To accept that. And now I do.
Yeah.
But I remember when Aaron was 2, one day he said, I just wish I was dark like you, Mommy. I don't like being orange.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, like, flash, like, 25 years ago, dude, I would kill to be your mocha. And here he was, wanting to be dark like Mommy.
Yeah.
And it was just, but then I saw that, and I was just like, even though I lifted him up and said, baby, your skin is beautiful, you are gorgeous, I did see that as a positive, that he saw my dark skin as something beautiful and something to want to be, because I did not feel that way as a kiddo, and I love that he just loved that. So
well, we had some of that at our home too. I mean, society can be so hard on little girls that you need to look this way, you need to dress this way, you need to be this way, and my girls several times growing up have said, I want to have blue eyes like you, Mama. I want to have blonde hair. Can I make my hair be like yours? And I've just tried to instill in them that God made you how you were intended to be. He made me how I'm intended to be, and you need to be proud of the beautiful, mixed skin that you are. And
they are stunning.
Yes,
they are gorgeous.
So thank you. You're so sweet. But yeah, it's been hard on them at times. They're like, why can't I have blue eyes? Why can't I have light colored hair? Why can't my skin be like yours? I'm like, you're beautiful, just the way you are. And so I have had to build them up at times, because they do hear things from society, even if it's not as much as your kids have to deal with. It's still the same of, you look, what people think of when they think of American, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I don't look like that, know. And I'm like, but you're beautiful. It doesn't matter. This is how God created you to be, and I want you to be proud of that, and be confident in who you are. And one other thing I might mention is, with Neville's culture, you're actually born into a Parsi. You're born into a religion, and so I think they had already made the decision that they wanted to be Christian and baptized when they came to the United States, but for them, they're no longer officially Parsi once you marry outside of that. And so I wanted my kids to know that, Daddy made this decision, his parents made this decision long before you were born. They wanted to be with the person they loved. And so it's just a different, most Americans don't have to deal with that their parents were raised with a different, not only culture, but a different religion. And so I think it's good for them to know that, when you come to the United States, there's just so many different backgrounds that can come. I think it's good for them to hear that this is your identity now, this is how your grandparents grew up, that this is the identity you have now, and you have your identity in Jesus. And
absolutely. Well, that was such a great conversation. Is there